Today is Tuesday, July 1st, 2014. Welcome to the Southbridge School Committee reorganizational meeting. I'd like this time to invite everybody to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock p.m., please. May I have a roll call?
Mr. Olivo?
Present.
Mrs. Congdon?
Present.
Mrs. Donovan?
Present.
Mrs. Quinney?
Present.
Mr. Abramson?
Present.
Dr. Page?
Present.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Present.
All present?
Thank you, and welcome to our new members, Dr. Page, Mr. Abrahamson, and we welcome back Mr. Olivo. Nice to have you all joining us tonight. Election of officers. The first will be for the office of chair. Are there any nominations for the office of chair?
I nominate Lauren McLaughlin to the chair position.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations for the office of chair?
I would like to nominate Ray Page.
Ray Page? Okay. We have two nominations. Are there any other nominations for chair? Seeing none, I'm going to close nominations. And can I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Congdon?
Just state your preference, Mr.
okay.
Page. Or
Mrs. McLaughlin.
Mrs. Donovan?
Mrs. McLaughlin.
Mrs. Quinney?
Mrs. McLaughlin.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Mrs. McLaughlin.
Dr. Page?
Mrs. McLaughlin.
Mr. Olivo?
Mr. Page.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Mrs. McLaughlin.
6 Mrs. McLaughlin, 1 Dr. Page.
Thank you very much. Now we need nominations for vice chair. Are there any nominations for vice chair? Mrs. Conga?
I nominate Mrs. Donovan.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Seeing none, nominations are closed. Can I have a roll call on that, please?
Mrs. Donovan?
Mrs. Donovan.
Mrs. Quinney?
Mrs. Donovan.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Mrs. Donovan.
Dr. Page?
Mrs. Donovan.
Mr. Olivo?
Mrs. Donovan.
Mrs. Congdon?
Mrs. Donovan.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Mrs. Donovan.
All Mrs. Donovan?
It's unanimous. Thank you. Next is the election of officers for the secretary. This is the position. The superintendent is the official secretary of the school committee organization. And so we would need a nomination of Ms. Pat Gardner. Mrs. Quinney?
I nominate Pat Gardner to the position of secretary.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Donovan. Is there any discussion on this agenda item? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Quinney?
Yes.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
All yes.
Unanimous, thank you. Next is the position of recording secretary. This position is currently held by Julianne Collins. Is there a motion or recommendation? Mrs. Donovan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I recommend Julianne Collins as recording secretary.
Thank you very much. We have a motion. Are there any other nominations for recording secretary? Seeing none, I'll announce nominations closed. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Quinney?
Julianne Collins.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Ms. Collins.
Dr. Page?
Ms. Collins.
Mr. Olivo?
Ms. Collins.
Mrs. Congdon?
Ms. Collins.
Mrs. Donovan?
Ms. Collins.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Ms. Collins.
Unanimous?
Thank you. The next is discussion as to the day and time of regular school committee meetings. For your consideration, The meetings have been held on Tuesdays, so as not to conflict with town council meetings, and that is the day that's traditionally been offered, but it's something we can discuss on the dais. Anybody have a recommendation or want to make a motion? Anybody? Mrs. Donovan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll make a recommendation that we meet on Tuesday evenings at 7 p.m.
Thank you. We have a motion to meet on Tuesdays at Tuesdays. We'll do the time after.
Oh, I'm sorry,
That's
yes, on Tuesdays. I'm sorry.
At 7 p.m. Well, we have a motion that we meet on Tuesdays as our meeting day. Is there a second to that
Second.
motion?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Quinney?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Thank you. Next is the time of commencement. Traditionally, our meetings have occurred at 7 o'clock p.m., but that's also something we can decide here tonight. Mrs. Quinney?
I move to have our meetings begin at 7 p.m.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the 7 p.m. time? Seeing none, can I have a roll call on that, please?
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Quinney?
Yes.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Thank you. Next, agenda item D is vote to establish subcommittees. We'll be at our regular business meeting to follow this reorganizational meeting discussing the makeup of those committees, but this is a vote to establish subcommittees for the 2014-2015 school year. So I would need a motion to begin that discussion. We currently have policy, curriculum, collective bargaining, family and community engagement, and our budget subcommittee this year was a committee of the whole. I have a motion.
Move the acceptance of subcommittees 1 through 4.
Acceptance of subcommittees 1 through 4. Is there a second on that motion?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Congdon. Is there any discussion on that motion? So we're going to accept subcommittees 1 through 4 in the motion. Okay. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Quinney?
Yes.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Now discussion as to the budget subcommittee versus committee of the whole. I would need a motion to begin discussion.
Move that the budget subcommittee or the budget be the committee of the whole.
Thank you. I have a motion that the budget subcommittee be, or the budget meetings be committee of the whole meetings. Do I have a second to that?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Quinney. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, can I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Quinney?
Yes.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Thank you. Agenda item E is the acceptance of rules of order, and I would need a motion to begin that discussion too.
I move to accept Robert's Rules of Order newly revised as our rules of order for the Southbridge School Committee this year.
Second.
Ms. Quinney makes the motion. Mr. Abrahamson seconds the motion. Is there any further discussion on this agenda item? Seeing none, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Quinney?
Yes.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Thank you. Motion carries. And now I would need a motion to adjourn this meeting. There will be a regular business meeting to follow, but I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Quinney makes the motion, seconded by Mr. Abrahamson. This meeting is adjourned. Do you want to, can I have a show of hands, please, to adjourn that meeting? Thank you. All in favor? The meeting is adjourned. Do you want to roll right into the next meeting? No. We will forego the Pledge of Allegiance then and roll right into public input, agenda item number 2. Is there anybody from the public that would like to address the school committee this evening? Seeing none, we'll call this meeting to order at 7:10 PM, please. May I have a roll call?
Sorry.
That's okay.
Mr. Olivo?
Present.
Mrs. Congdon?
Present.
Mrs. Donovan?
Present.
Mrs. Quinney?
Present.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Present.
Dr. Page?
Present.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Present.
All present?
Thank you. Approval of the minutes, regular school committee meeting minutes of June 17th, 2014. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mrs. Quinney makes a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Olivo. Is there any discussion? Mrs. Quinney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Under school committee reports, section C, it calls it the Wellness Subcommittee. We don't have a Wellness Subcommittee. It will be the Wellness Advisory Committee. I recommend that change, as well as Jasmine Rivas's name is spelled wrong. It's Jasmin. That is all.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Mrs. Donovan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. What I'd like to point out is in Section 4, members in attendance, one of the people that are listed there is Ms. Rebecca Sweetman. She is the academic dean at the Southbridge Middle High School, and while she was expected to present that evening, she was unable to be available, so she was replaced by Ms. Courtney Brusso. So next to letter C, for others in attendance, we need to strike Ms. Rebecca Sweetman, academic dean, and replace her with Courtney Brusso. And on that same line, moving over to Section 9, under presentations, again, Ms. Sweetman is listed as the presenter, so we need to strike that and replace her with Courtney Brusso. And similarly, the paragraph that follows, almost near the bottom of that paragraph, with the line that begins, Mrs. McLaughlin thanked Ms. Krantz and Ms. Sweetman for their presentation. Again, please strike Ms. Sweetman and replace it with Ms. Brusso. And that is all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other changes? With those changes, can I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes?
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes?
Mrs. Quinney?
Yes.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Abstain?
Dr. Page?
Abstain.
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
We have 5 yes and 2 abstentions.
Thank you. Under chair announcements, just a few brief ones. First and foremost, this is Ms. Gardner's first school committee meeting as superintendent of schools. I'd like to welcome her and just say that we're glad that you're here. Look forward to working with you, and thank you for agreeing to serve. Thank you
very much.
And also to our newly elected members, Mr. Abrahamson, Mr. Olivo, and Dr. Page. Again, just want to extend a warm welcome to each of you. We're very, very glad you're all here and look forward to working with you this year. This evening, I will be removing agenda items 12H and I from the agenda unless there is an objection from the members. Seeing none. And finally, I would like to thank Cable Access Television. At the last meeting, I intended to do that, to thank Cable Access for all the work they do in volunteering their time and coming here and taping these meetings and helping us out. It's greatly appreciated. You do a wonderful job, so thank you all. Even in the booth, thank you. This evening, there are no reports and no school committee reports, as our subcommittees will be formed hopefully shortly. There are no presentations. There's no report of the finance director. We're moving along swimmingly. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Gardner for the report of the superintendent.
Good evening. First of all, I would like to say thank you for this opportunity to serve in the Southbridge Public Schools. I had a great year here last year, and I think sometimes when you say Southbridge, people don't expect you to say that, but I had a really nice year, and we're going in a great direction. I'd like to thank those of you who have served on the committee, and I would like to welcome you who have joined the committee. I have found you to be honest, forthright, and not hard to work with, which when you hear about school committees, that's not always what you hear. So I greatly appreciate what you do and the fact that you will do this work. While many want to talk about it, you come out and spend endless hours doing it, so I really appreciate it. As I start this year, I just pledge that I will do my best. I'm excited. Next year will be my 30th year in public education, so it's kind of a good milestone for me to move forward with, and I look forward to the challenge of working here. A couple of things that I would like to add. Yesterday was a bittersweet day as we lost Superintendent Nimrico to retirement, but I had a good year with him, and I'm excited that he will still be around some to help me through some of the decisions and just to be a sounding board at times when I need one. Prior to his leaving, he tied up a lot of loose ends, including hiring the administrative positions that were open. And I will name some of them. A couple of them we are still waiting on contracts to be signed. As you know, we hired Melissa Earls as the high school, middle school principal, and we recently, just this week, hired the principal and the assistant principal at West Street School, and we will announce those after their contract negotiations at our next meeting. We hired Mary Skripczak, who was a longtime Southbridge teacher, so it was exciting to move somebody from within our own school district to a position of authority. We will be adding Jeff Coggins as the high school, middle school assistant principal. He will be taking Kate Potter's place, who made a decision to go to Charlton Street Elementary School as I'm going to say president, I don't know why, as vice principal. And she has experience with elementary school, and she just felt like that would be a really good move for her at this time. Also tonight, we have with us, as I said, prior to Mr. Nimrico leaving, he appointed Cheryl Stanton as the next Director of Teacher and Learning. And she's with us tonight, but I'd like to just introduce her a little bit. Cheryl is a many-year educator. I won't say how long, because it does tell you how old we are. But she worked in the Springfield schools for a number of years she wore many different hats as a teacher, as a district instructional technology specialist, as an instructional research specialist. And when she was at Kiley Middle School, the team that she worked on actually created some protocols for MCAS that the then DOE, now the DESC, actually adopted that involved the Kurzweil. She has, early in her educational career, she started her college as a golfer at the University of Alabama, Birmingham, then transferred to UConn, has a master's degree from the Elms College, and like me is all but dissertation, with hers coming from the University of Phoenix. But she brings a wealth of knowledge. In the last few years, she took over an elementary school in Ludlow, did great turnaround work there, and then, as many schools do, when you do a great job and you get comfortable, they moved her to the middle school, and she has taken their middle school from being one of the typical middle schools in Massachusetts that haven't been doing very well to where it's a very high-performing school with a fantastic culture for performance. So we're extremely lucky to have her, and I'd just like to welcome her and ask her if she would like to come up to the microphone. We didn't really talk about this, and say a few words.
Well, thank you. I thank you for the opportunity to serve in the Southbridge Public Schools. Thank you for the introduction. I was trying to remember all of the work that's been going on. I started education to make a difference for kids, and I've been happily able to do that in my many positions, and I do hope to be able to continue that here. There is a lot of hard work that's already been done, and a lot of hard work that needs to continue to bring Southbridge to the place where every child every day is getting a high-quality education, and I'm pleased to be a part of that transition and journey with you. So,
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is there anybody who'd like to ask any questions? Or? Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank
Joining
you.
us this evening.
And so we are currently hiring teachers. We have filled several positions. We have a few positions to go. We've been fortunate that we have hired some excellent candidates to fill the positions that have been open in Southbridge schools, but we're really finding top candidates who want to work here. I think when you start doing turnaround work and it's positive, people start noticing. Many of the candidates that we have hired have actually contacted us with a resume, and they wanted to work here, and we've had to say, please apply on School Spring. And so that's been a wonderful experience here, and I know that the former superintendent, it's going to be hard for me to say that for a while, said publicly several times that there was a time when people weren't looking to come here, and there was a belief sometimes that nobody wanted to work in Southbridge. And I can tell you that that is not the truth. And I think the work that you have done, because so many times now, so much depends on the school committee and the mental health, I think, of the school committee, and I say that jovially, but people are looking at the work that we're doing. Our accelerated improvement plan is, we have a couple of things to do. We're meeting tomorrow. We have one that is going to push us along next year. We're going to be driven by data, and we're going to be driven by student achievement. So I look forward to working with all of you. I look forward to working with the staff that we put together this year, with Walter Solzak as Director of Operations, Colleen Culligan as Special Education Director, Karin Sheridan as the Finance Director, Aaron Osborne as the Supervisor of Instruction, Elizabeth Scanlon as the Supervisor of Special Education, and we have one of the best data people that I've ever worked with in Julie Fields. So we're really excited about this year, and we look forward to many successes in the coming year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Mrs.
Madam Chair,
Quinn?
I just had a question regarding Mary Skripczak. You might have said it, and I might not have heard you. She'll be the principal at Eastford Road School, correct?
Yes, I did not say that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Agenda item number 12 is school committee actions. We're going to try and take care of some things tonight that'll get us set up to just jump right in. So the first would be a vote to approve the annual school committee meeting schedule for the year. There was a draft proposal made. I don't know if everybody's received it, had time to look at it, so we need a motion and a second to begin discussion.
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Abrahamson makes a motion, Mrs. Congdon seconds the motion. Now discussion as to the annual school committee meeting schedule. Anybody? May I start it off then? I would just say that these, the following dates are Tuesdays, and with the exception, there were a couple of tricky ones. Most occur the second and fourth Tuesdays of the month. In November, November 11th is Veterans Day, that Tuesday. So there's an option to either move that meeting to the November 4th or to have it on the 12th, which is a Wednesday. However, anybody wants to do that. And then in June 23rd, which is the fourth Tuesday, will be the town election. So there's a meeting June 30th scheduled, but that's all open for discussion. Anybody?
I'd like to make a motion to change the November 11th meeting to November 12th.
November 12th, okay? Is there a second to change that particular date?
Second?
Seconded by Mrs. Congdon. Is there any discussion on that, the motion to change the November 11th date to November 12th? Seeing none, can I have a roll call on that, please?
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Quinney?
Yes.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Unanimous?
Thank you. Are there any other changes, requests, anything? Mrs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just curious about the June 30th proposal. That's a Tuesday.
It
Would
is.
we have our reorganization meeting that meeting rather than July 1st historically, seeing that the election would have been the week before? Would that June 30th date replace, or no? That's
No.
just a regular one?
No, because the term becomes effective July 1. So the
So-
members, so the reorg meeting would then take place if we follow that. I
The
think
day
it's
after?
July 7th.
Or we would just move it up a week? And
We could do it on that Tuesday, or the committee could make any recommendation.
do we happen to know about the town council? Would they be meeting the Monday before the town election?
I
We
don't know that
right?
yet. They haven't had their reorganizational meeting yet. What we could do is we could hold off on that date. We could accept the other dates. We can hold off on that date. We can set a date which can be changed. It's not set in stone. This was just a guide.
Okay, then I make a motion that we make the last school committee meeting of this school year on June 30th, as proposed.
We have a motion to make June 30th, 2015, the last meeting. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Congdon. Any other discussion on that? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Quinney?
Yes.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mrs. Quinney? Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes,
Oh, yes.
thank you. And then if...
I didn't vote.
Mrs. Donovan.
Mrs. Donovan?
Ms. Collins, I didn't vote.
Julian?
I didn't vote.
Oh, Mrs. Donovan, sorry.
Yes, thank you.
And then I would entertain a motion to accept the other dates on the proposed schedule.
So moved.
Mr. Abrahamson, I'm sorry? I screwed up.
Was that the motion that started our discussion?
Okay, then thank you, then it's okay to do that, so now we just need a roll call on that then.
Mrs. Quinney?
Yes, I just want to clarify, we're voting on the motion
On
to
the original
approve
motion.
the amended proposed schedule, correct? All right. Yes, thank you.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes,
Oh, yes.
thank you. Leaving for vacation tomorrow, my mind's kind of already there, sorry. Next is the vote to approve subcommittee member assignments. There was a proposal on subcommittee assignments. Hope everybody's had an opportunity to look those over. So I would need a motion.
I move to approve the subcommittee assignments as proposed.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Olivo. Is there any discussion on the subcommittee assignments here? Seeing none, can I have a roll call on that?
Mrs. Quinney?
Yes?
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Thank you. Next is we need some school committee members. We have to appoint annually school committee members to sign payroll warrants and expenditure warrants. That's agenda items C and D. So first we would solicit volunteers to sign the payroll warrants, and we need one member plus one alternate. Does anybody want to be a volunteer to do that? To sign the payroll warrants? Anybody? Mrs. Dunn? Okay. And we need an alternate to sign payroll warrants.
I'll be lost.
Mr. Olivo, great. So now we would need a motion to assign school committee member Mrs. Donovan and alternate member Mr. Olivo to sign payroll warrants for the 2014-2015 school year.
So moved?
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Quinney, seconded by Mr. Abrahamson. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, a roll call, please.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Quinney?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Thank you. Similarly, this is, we need to solicit some volunteers, 3 members plus 1 alternate to sign the expenditure warrants. It's a good gig because you get to find out what's really happening in the school system. So is there anybody who'd like to volunteer to do that? Mrs. Quinney? Anybody else? Mrs. Congdon? Anybody else? Mr. Olivo? And we need an alternate. Is there anybody who'd like to be alternate? Mr. Page? Dr. Page? Okay, Dr. Page.
Madam,
I'm sorry, yes.
I was going to say, can we have more than one alternate? I know in the past we've had,
We certainly can.
just in case,
can.
sometimes people are away, it's tricky.
So, was that Mr. Abrahamson? Did you know?
that was me.
Oh, Mrs. Dunn.
Sure.
Okay, so I would need a motion to assign school committee members Mrs. Quinney, Mrs. Congdon, Mr. Olivo, and alternate members Dr. Page and Mrs. Donovan to sign expenditure warrants for the 2014-2015 school year.
So moved?
Mrs. Quinney makes the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Olivo. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes?
Mrs. Quinney?
Yes.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
All yes.
Thank you. Agenda item 12E is a vote to appoint a Special Education Parent Advisory Committee liaison to the school committee. Is there a volunteer for this position before we make the motion? I'm looking this way. Mrs. Quinney, what a surprise. Mrs. Quinney volunteers. Is anybody else interested? Okay. So I would need a motion to appoint Mrs. Quinney, Special Education Parent Advisory Liaison to the school committee.
So moved.
Mr. Abrahamson makes the motion. Do I have a second?
Second?
Seconded by Mrs. Congdon. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes?
Mrs. Quinney?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Abrahamson? Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes,
All yes.
thank you. Agenda item 12F is the first reading of revised policy ADF. This is the wellness policy, 4 pages. Do I have a motion, or does anybody want to, would we just like to read it into the record? Or do we want to waive? Read or waive?
I know what it says.
What?
I said, I know what it says.
I
Anybody else want it
know,
read?
but for the public's benefit. Do you want to read it? Let's read it. The meeting's going along quickly. Ready to read?
Yep.
Mrs. Quinney, did you want to do the honors? or-
You can, I can't read over those letters.
Okay. Wellness policy, ADF. The Southbridge School District is committed to providing an environment that enhances learning and development of lifelong wellness practices. This policy serves to guide the district toward a school community and community at large that enjoys higher levels of wellness. It is intended to be a living document that will evolve with progress toward our goals. We recognize a spirit of collaboration with community organizations as an essential component to ensure the health of our youth. Each school will establish an individual wellness committee. School wellness committees shall examine their school's learning environment and organizational traditions to identify inclusive practices and opportunities to celebrate diverse cultures and identities, maintaining the Wellness Advisory Committee's standards for cultural proficiency. This includes the physical environment, the academic environment, classroom curriculum, and promotional materials. Nutrition education. Number 1, nutrition education will be provided within the district will be aligned with the Massachusetts Comprehensive Health Curriculum Framework. Number 2, the goal is that students receive nutrition education that teaches the skills they need to adopt and maintain healthy eating behaviors in school and beyond. Number 3, students will receive consistent and healthy eating messages in the classroom and throughout the entire school from teachers, nurses, administrators, and food service staff. Nutrition promotion. Number 1, the Southbridge Public School District's school nutrition program shall comply with USDA standards. Number 2, all students will have access to hand washing facilities prior to meals. Number 3, the school shall provide a clean, safe meal environment for students. Number 4, accommodations shall be provided for students with specific food allergies, medical issues, and food intolerances. Number 5, the school shall make available plain potable water to all students at no cost. The use of water bottles shall be permitted to drink throughout the day where appropriate. The district shall ensure, number 6, the district shall ensure students have access to the school breakfast program prior to the start of school and sufficient time to eat their lunch. Number 7, all food sold within the school during school hours must comply with Massachusetts School Nutrition Standards, in parentheses, JSI A-list, close parentheses. Number 8, a working snack time shall be made available in all K through 12 classrooms. Teachers shall determine a reasonable time for snack during the course of the day. With regard to health education, our goal is to encourage, educate, and motivate our students to make positive daily decisions and develop healthy lifetime skills and habits. The pre-K through 12 health education curriculum will strive to follow the National Health Education Standards and the Massachusetts Health Curriculum Frameworks. Physical activity. Number 1, physical activity and physical education opportunities within the district shall be aligned with the Massachusetts Health Curriculum Frameworks. Physical education classes shall be sequential, building from year to year, and content will include movement, personal fitness, and personal and social responsibility. Students should be able to demonstrate competency through the application of knowledge, skill, and practice. B, physical education includes the instruction of individual activities as well as competitive and non-competitive team sports to encourage lifelong physical activity. Number 2, Physical education classes and physical activity opportunities will be available for all students to A, expose youngsters to a wide variety of physical activities, and B, teach physical skill to help maintain a lifestyle of health and fitness. Number 3, physical activity will be integrated across core curricula throughout the school day to increase concentration and application. Number 4, elementary schools will provide daily supervised recess period, preferably outdoors, during which moderate to vigorous physical activity will be encouraged. Recess is not used as a punishment or reward. Wide variation in Southbridge Public School facilities, both indoors and outdoors, presents challenges in providing active recess, but sedentary activities should not be substituted. Individual schools must explore solutions that overcome their limitations to provide students active recess time. Number 5, community access to school gym, fields, and playgrounds will be encouraged to promote physical activity. Number 6, information and participation in or before or after school programs along with community programs shall be encouraged. School health services. Southbridge Public Schools shall provide school health services and qualified healthcare providers who will appraise, protect, and support the physical, social, and emotional well-being of students, staff, and families, which will build a healthy school environment. Southbridge Public Schools shall use a collaborative preventative approach by including community agencies in addressing the needs of students, staff, and families. These services shall promote academic achievement by supporting students' physical, mental, emotional, and social health. Implementation and evaluation of this policy. The principal in each building or the principal's designee shall be charged with the operational responsibility for ensuring that the foods, beverages, and physical activities in their facilities meet the requirements of this policy. Members of the individual school wellness committees will meet with building principals to facilitate the implementation of this policy at the building level. Parents will be made aware of this policy's implementation prior to or at the start of the school year through principals' bulletins, nurses' correspondence, and the district website. Evaluation of this policy will be directed by the Wellness Advisory Committee. This group, which represents a diverse cross-section of the school community, will meet at least quarterly and will gather evidence as to the effectiveness of this policy and will make revisions to it as needed. A report noting the progress and adherence to this policy will be prepared and presented to the superintendent on an annual basis. The legal reference is 105's Code of Mass Regulations, Section 215, and the 2010 Acts relative to school nutrition. It also is cross-referenced school committee policies BG, BGB, and BGC, the Massachusetts Comprehensive Curriculum Framework, the USDA Child Nutrition Programs, the John Stalker Institute, known as the JSI A-List, Mass Common Core Standards, the National Health Education Standards. We'll note that the first reading took place at tonight's meeting, July 1st, 2014. Second and third readings to follow at subsequent meetings. Moving on to agenda item 12G. I'm sorry, Mrs. Donovan has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a question relative to this. I know that the wellness policy is new, and obviously the advisory committee has done a very good job of getting it to us. My question is more for myself as well as the public. This is the first reading. After hearing this, if people have additional questions or recommendations or changes to this, what would be the proper channel through which to direct those concerns? Would it be through Mrs. Quinney, who was the chair of that advisory committee, or is there another venue for that? I'm just not sure.
It would, thank you, Madam Chair. It would be through the policy subcommittee. The Wellness Advisory Committee put together the policy. They approved it to be forwarded on to the policy subcommittee. From that point, it's the property of the policy subcommittee to do with what they feel best meets the needs of the district.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Anything else? Okay. Thank you. Agenda item 12D is a vote to appoint Patricia Gardner to serve as the representative for Southbridge Public Schools to the Southern Worcester County Educational Collaborative for the 2014-2015 school year. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mrs. Quinney makes a motion. Do I have a second? Seconded by Mr. Olivo. Is there any discussion on this agenda item? Seeing none, can I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes?
Mrs. Quinney?
Yes.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
All yes?
Thank you. It's unanimous. The next is vote 12J, a vote to approve a donation from Savers Bank in the amount of $500 to go towards the West Street School playground. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mrs. Donovan makes the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Quinney. Is there any discussion on this agenda item? Mrs. Quinney?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a question regarding the donation where the playground committee was part of the PTA. How does that work regarding the school committee accepting the donation and then that getting back to that committee for the playground build?
If I may, Madam Chair, actually, it should read the Southbridge Elementary PTA. It's deposited into the Southbridge Elementary PTA account for the West Street School Playground, which is a subcommittee of the Southbridge Elementary PTA.
So do we approve that here, or?
Does that need to be changed? Because the,
People have been making the check out to the West Street School Playground Committee
the West Street School.
through the
playground.
Southbridge Elementary PTA,
Okay.
so it should be okay.
Should be, so it should be okay.
Right.
As is.
I guess my question is, do we need to vote on it as a school committee to accept that donation then, if it's going to the PTA?
Well, this is, if I may,
Yeah.
on June 25th, I don't know if you received the memo that came up with that, was sent to Lisa Russo in the central office, attached a Savers Bank check in the amount of $500. This check should be deposited in the West Street School Student Activities account. Mr. Lab had authorized this money and money that was raised through the UNO's dough raisers to be deposited, to be released for expenses related to the West Street School playground.
Okay, so we're accepting the donation to the West Street School Activities account to then be cut, so we need to clarify that. Okay.
Correct.
Can I amend the motion to read? I move to accept the donation from Savers Bank in the amount of $500 to be deposited into the West Street School Student Activities account to then be allocated to the West Street School Playground Committee.
Forward, did you say, I'm sorry, did you?
Allocated to the-
Allocated.
West Street School Playground.
June, the West Street School. Sorry, I'm just writing that down. Okay. So we have an amended motion here.
Wait a second.
What? Sorry.
So I'll second that.
Mrs. Donovan seconds that amended motion. Is there any discussion on the amended motion?
On the amendment.
I'm sorry.
Just on the amendment.
On the amendment to the motion, I'm sorry.
To amend the motion.
Seeing none, can I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Quinney?
Yes.
Mr. Abramson?
Yes.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes,
Unanimous?
thank you, and thank you to Savers Bank for supporting the West Street School Committee. So the motion to, now we have the main motion. We have to return to the main motion, which is the vote to approve the donation from Savers Bank in the amount of $500 to be deposited into West Street School Activities account to be allocated to the West Street School Playground Committee. Does that correctly state the motion? Okay. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Donovan. Is there any discussion on the motion as amended? Mrs. Condon.
I just wanted to say to the community that there will be a community build day on Saturday, August 2nd at 8 a.m. for the West Street School Playground. Volunteers will be needed in a number of areas as the community completes the build of the playground in one day. You must be 18 or older to participate in the active build. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Quinney?
Yes.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
Abstain?
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
6 yes and 1 abstention.
Thank you. And again, thank you to Savers Bank, and thank you also to Mrs. Congdon and the elementary PTA for spearheading that. There's no unfinished business this evening. The next regular school committee meeting will take place on Tuesday, July 29th at 7 p.m. in council chambers. And now I'd like to open it up for member forum. If any members have any announcements they'd like to make or anything they'd like to say. We'll start down here. Mrs. Nope. All set. Mr. Page or Dr. Page?
Yeah, just very quickly, I would like to thank the community's support for electing me to this position, and I hope I can serve you well. I appreciate the confidence that you've placed in me, and I'm going to be a dedicated servant to improving the school system. Thank you.
Mr. Leva?
I would like to publicly say thank you to all of those who came out and voted me to this position. I am glad to be serving again on this in this capacity and look forward to working with the newly elected members and those who have been appointed as chair, co-chair, and the various positions. I would like to again say that I am very happy to be here and happy with those who voted for me. I would like to just say that next time these votes come out, I mean, we had about 15% voters come out, and that is very low numbers. And I just want, the community to know that if you want say-so in what we do as a school committee, it is imperative that you come out to these polls and vote. Some people claim that it's not going to make a change, but if you don't vote, you'll never know. So again, I look forward to working with everybody, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leva. Start down here. Mrs. Donovan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to welcome the new members. I look forward to working with all three of you, and to Ms. Gardner as she starts her new endeavor as our superintendent. I'm looking forward to this year, working hard again, and it's a pleasure to serve, so thank you to all.
Thank you. Mrs. Quinney?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to welcome our new members, and I, too, look forward to the year ahead. I think we've got a lot of hard work to do, and we've got some momentum, and wanted to congratulate Ms. Gardner and welcome all the new people that we've hired into administrative positions. I think we've got a great team in place, and moving forward, I think we have a lot of hard work will be done this year and needs to be accomplished in order to do what is in the best interest of kids and ensuring that we have a school system that not only challenges all of our children, but is one that we can be proud of as community members as well. So thank you to all who have donated their time and their willingness to serve. Welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Abrahamson, last but not least.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, let me say how grateful I am to the voters of Southbridge for allowing me the privilege of serving on the Southbridge School Committee. I look forward to working with all my fellow committee members in the vital and important work ahead. On another topic, there's been much discussion all across the state as school systems grapple with the decision to select the PARC test, which is the Partnership for Assessment of Readiness in College for College and Careers field test, in the spring of 2015, or stick with the MCAS. Now, former Superintendent Nemberko recommended staying with the MCAS, and the committee agreed at its last meeting, and I concur with that vote. However, I think it needs to be noted that whether the state switches to PARC or stays with MCAS, the method for testing will significantly change as online testing becomes the norm. The so-called testing for a new generation means that we must work very diligently to ensure that our students have the skills and technology they need. In fact, the current timeline has the state moving to online testing by 2019, which means that it will affect students entering grade 8 in Massachusetts schools in the fall. In a related matter, I believe it will be that we will be helped greatly if we begin to view our school system as an urban district with all the associated challenges. In the eyes of the state, Southbridge is a city that wants to be called a town. In 2008, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council classified each of the cities and towns in Massachusetts, and of the 9 classifications, from the largest city, Boston, to the smallest towns, Southbridge is considered a sub-regional urban center, just one step below Worcester. According to this study, Southbridge is surrounded by smaller and smaller towns with far different characteristics, with the possible exception of Webster, which is closest. As an urban district, I believe we would receive greater attention and greater support on the state and federal level. Many urban schools are top-notch with opportunities exceeding small towns, and I believe a change in perspective will start the process towards Southbridge becoming one of those excellent urban districts. And finally, I just want to wish everyone a safe and happy 4th of July. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. There is no executive session this evening, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Mr. Olivo made a motion to adjourn, seconded by Dr. Page. All in favor? Thank you. It's unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody.